Welcome back to Red Pill Examined, where I look at and debunk red pill talking points and expose red pill content creators as hypocrites, liars, and scammers. And for today's video, I want to show you guys that when it comes to red pill content creators and divorced red pill men, that their beef has never been with the family and divorce court or even the child support system, but that at the root of it all is their failure to take accountability for picking the wrong mate. And so we start with Coach Greg Adams, a divorced 47-year-old man who loves to talk about the system being rigged against men, and when speaking about his marriage and subsequent divorce, would have his followers believe that he was the victim. In fact, in his book, The Free Agent Lifestyle, he speaks of having been made a quote-unquote sacrificial lamb for his family, or a lean meat for the family courts to feast off of. And so for this video, I'm going to debunk his victim narrative by showing all of the red flags that he saw and was warned about prior to his marriage, but chose to ignore, that then led to his divorce and custody battle, which continues to this day. And so without further ado, here is the first red flag that Coach Greg Adams chose to ignore.
Said CGA, what red flags did I overlook before my marriage? Without getting into specifics, the family dynamic that I overlooked, meaning the family was haters on each other. Their family was definitely all up in the business. And I should have took good notes of that. One of the red flags that I will acknowledge is that people in her family had a bunch of haters, right? Her family had a bunch of haters, meaning they're that hating family, the constant competition, the investigating, the inquiring. Most of the information that you gave them, they used against you. And thus, I saw that really early and I didn't like that about them. And of course, that also manifests in your relationship talk as well. And they openly dismiss their male patriarchs. They oftentimes talk negative about their male patriarchs. And when you're in the beginning of the relationship, you can kind of control it. But should there be any dissension in your relationship, it's a rapski. And then she feeds into that. They feed into that. So hater ass families, you got to watch out for them. Hater ass families, bro.
So red flag number one is the family drama, as well as the women in the family not respecting the men and their authority. Let's move on to red flag number two.
Said CGA, what red flags did I overlook before my marriage? Without getting into specifics, the family dynamic that I overlooked, meaning the family was haters on each other. And I should have took notes of mental health. That was a big one. Knowing what I know now, there were definitely red flags and signs, and actually latching on to that now to use against me. And it was used against me in the relationship. So there was always a lineage on. This is why I don't really sympathize for people who have mental health issues. I mean, because people use it as a weapon. They yield it like a sword. It's their protection. So that's the situation with that one. That if I definitely overlooked that. I actually got a warning from someone prior to my commitment and engagement about that being prevalent. And I missed it. I actually didn't miss it. I walked past it, and it's biting me in the butt to this day. I actually got a warning from someone prior to my commitment and engagement.
Now, for any self-aware man, this is more than enough to end the relationship. But apparently not for Coach Greg Adams. So let's now move on to red flag number three.
In this mommy wine culture, all right, this is, to me, it's completely despicable. It's an excuse to drink and make bad decisions, all right? Women feel that dealing with children all day entitles them to drink wine. 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, maybe a bottle a night. In my opinion, and I've experienced this, I've lived with a woman who was my wife who did this and didn't consider herself an alcoholic, but they were dependent on it. And they use this wine culture. Remember what a wino was? They were somebody who stood out in the corner with a brown paper bag. So this mommy wine culture essentially allows these women to consume this much alcohol without any consideration for treatment. I've lived with a woman who was my wife who did this and didn't consider herself an alcoholic, but they were dependent on it.
I've been in a situation where I was coaching my daughter's soccer team, and I had parents that knew my ex. My ex had for a year prior or two been spilling beans on me, spilling blood and burning bread on my name. And then later on, once they saw me, he was like, he seems like a good dude. He don't seem like nothing that she's been painting you as. Then they start thinking about all the bad shit the baby mama was doing, because they knew allegedly she lived with a drug dealer. They knew she was an alcoholic. They knew. And so they was like, wait a minute. They knew she was an alcoholic. They knew she was an alcoholic. They knew she was an alcoholic.
Now, red flag number 3, which is alcoholism, needs further examination. Because what we know for a fact is that per Coach Greg Adams, his ex-wife was a heavy drinker during the marriage and became an alleged alcoholic after the divorce. Here's what else we know. His ex-wife also had to get a liver transplant due to cirrhosis of the liver, which is caused by excessive alcohol consumption. So now here's the million-dollar question. Did Coach Greg Adams' ex-wife drink prior to the marriage? Well, the answer is yes, just not excessively, according to Coach Greg Adams. What he's also stated on his live stream is that his ex-wife comes from a family of drinkers. And so when you take that into account, along with the fact that people with mental health issues tend to self-medicate, then it all starts to make sense. Now, red flag number 4 is one that Coach Greg Adams has never mentioned to his followers, and that is financial issues, aka debt. What you guys are now seeing on the screen is the official bankruptcy record of Coach Greg Adams' ex-wife from 2007. Now keep in mind that they both got married in 2004, so this was about 3 years into the marriage. So as we look at the paperwork, we see that she was $73,000 in debt at the time. However, what we specifically want to know is how much of that $73,000 came before the marriage or pre-2004. And as we look at the summary of her debts, we see that she owed $10,000 to Bank of America in credit card debt from 2003, $15,990 to First Financial Bank, also in credit card debt from 2001, $120 to the Gap from 1998, and she owed $14,100 in student loan debt from 2000, giving us a grand total of $40,210 from pre-2004 bills. Now, one point that I want to make in light of all of this is that in life, you attract what you are. And so for Coach Greg Adams to attract someone with so many red flags, what does that say about him? Another point is that red pill men love to talk about how men are logical while women are emotional. But if that's indeed the case, then number 1, how did Coach Greg Adams logically come to the conclusion that he should marry his ex-wife given all of her red flags? And number 2, how could he justify not getting a prenup to protect himself given said red flags? Well, that's because when it came to his marriage, Coach Greg Adams made an emotional decision and threw logic completely out the window. And so when red pill men say that women are emotional, please understand that most of the time, it's projection. Which is to say that they're taking an unwanted trait they don't like about themselves and attributing that to women. And this is where personal accountability comes in, where you can't just blame the family courts or the child support system, because all they're trying to do at that point is make the best out of a bad situation that was caused by your poor choices. And instead of admitting to being a prisoner of his emotions, what Coach Greg Adams does is he gets on YouTube every day and uses his podcast as an outlet for his grief and anger at his ex-wife, and continuously nags about being a victim and about how the system is rigged against men. And so he'll continue to propagate the gender war by showing his followers TikTok videos of men being treated unfairly, or articles and news stories of worst case scenarios when it comes to divorce, and use that along with misinterpreted data as evidence for why men shouldn't get married and start a family. Now, unfortunately, telling men not to get married also promotes a depopulation agenda, but that's a story for another day. Nevertheless, the purpose of this video was to simply show that when it comes to red pill men, but more specifically Coach Greg Adams, that it's never been about the family courts or the child support system, but that it all started with picking the wrong mate, despite seeing and being warned of multiple red flags, and that everything else that preceded that, whether it be positive or negative, was just a byproduct of that decision. And so now for Coach Greg Adams to play the victim card, knowing that he had every opportunity to end his relationship pre-marriage, shows that he, just like the woman he criticizes, will avoid accountability at all costs.
You know, guys, you got to make decisions in life. I'm very good at making decisions.
I might kill my ex, not the best idea. His new girlfriend's next, how'd I get